10 dangerous places you must never enter. The corruption of rulers does not begin with cruelty. It begins with comfort. Power rarely collapses because it is attacked. It collapses because it is misunderstood. You believe that danger arrives loudly. With banners, with marching armies, with visible enemies pressing against your walls. No, the most dangerous forces arrive softly. They compliment you. They applaud you. They protect your ego. They make you feel secure. And when a ruler feels secure too early, decline has already begun. Before I speak of the 10 places, you must understand something deeper. Power is not merely possession. It is perception. It is structure. It is momentum. It is fear. It is respect. It is habit. And most of all, it is psychological control, over others, and over oneself. The prince who conquers cities but cannot govern his own impulses is already weak. The leader who commands armies but cannot command his ego will eventually lose both. Power seduces before it destroys. And so we begin with seduction. 1. The court of flattery. The most beautiful trap in the world. When a man first rises to authority, he is cautious. He questions. He listens. He observes. But as he stabilizes, something subtle begins to change. People stop contradicting him, not because he is always right, but because he is powerful. Power alters the behavior of those around you before it alters you. This is the beginning of the court of flattery. It is not a physical place. It is an environment created by hierarchy. Imagine a great hall. High ceilings, golden light, marble floors polished smooth by ceremony. You sit elevated. Others stand below. Already the geometry of the room distorts truth. Elevation changes speech. Those below must look upward. And when men look upward long enough, they begin to adjust their words. The flatterer does not announce himself. He appears reasonable, measured, supportive. He rarely says, "You are perfect." He says, "Your instinct is sound." He says, "Your vision is clearer than most." He says, "Many would not have thought of that." He speaks in moderation. And moderation makes praise believable. Understand this clearly. The flatterer survives by studying your reactions. If you reward bold agreement, he will become bold. If you reward gentle affirmation, he will become subtle. If you punish contradiction, he will remove it entirely. Gradually, your court becomes curated. Opposition disappears. Discomfort vanishes. Your ideas encounter no resistance. You begin to believe this is because your ideas are superior. But it is because resistance has become dangerous. This is how blindness begins. The psychological isolation of the powerful. Common men are corrected daily. They are challenged. They are contradicted. They are humbled. But the prince is insulated. The higher you rise, the fewer speak freely. The fewer speak freely, the less friction your mind experiences. Friction sharpens judgment. Without friction, judgment dulls. The mind requires opposition to remain precise. If every proposal you make is applauded, you lose calibration. You lose the ability to measure reality accurately. The danger of flattery is not emotional weakness. It is strategic distortion. Decisions become based on filtered information. Filtered information produces flawed strategy. Flawed strategy produces delayed catastrophe. And catastrophe, when delayed long enough, appears sudden. But it was built slowly. Built in gold halls. Built in polite conversations. Built in comfortable approval. The structure that creates flattery. Do not blame only individuals. Blame structure. If advancement depends on pleasing you, then pleasing you becomes rational. If access depends on agreement, then agreement becomes currency. Men are not fools. They adapt. If contradiction results in exclusion, then contradiction disappears. And you, surrounded by agreement, assume stability. The wise ruler understands this incentive structure. He does not demand flattery. But he knows it will emerge naturally. So he constructs safeguards. He invites counsel at defined times. He protects the advisor who speaks honestly when invited. He makes it known that correction, when disciplined, is valued. But he also punishes chaos. Truth must be structured, otherwise dissent becomes disorder. The balance is delicate. Few rulers achieve it. Most prefer harmony. Harmony is pleasant. Harmony is fatal. Case study in decline. Consider any leader who surrounded himself exclusively with loyalists. Observe what happens. First, competence is replaced by obedience. Then analysis is replaced by affirmation. Then policy is replaced by instinct. Then instinct is insulated from correction. And finally, error compounds without resistance. When crisis arrives, there are no strong minds left nearby. Only those skilled at agreement. This is why tyrants fall dramatically, not because they lacked force, but because they lacked accurate information. They believed their own echo. The court of flattery echoes beautifully, until it shatters. The addiction of praise. Flattery is intoxicating. It reduces anxiety. It confirms identity. It creates psychological safety. And the mind prefers safety. Especially the mind under pressure. A ruler bears enormous responsibility. Uncertainty surrounds him. Threats linger unseen. Praise becomes relief. Relief becomes dependence. Dependence becomes vulnerability. To reject flattery requires discipline. You must distrust comfort. You must question excessive agreement. You must occasionally ask, who here disagrees? And mean it. But if you ask and punish honesty, you destroy the mechanism forever. The ruler must master his pride before he masters his court. If ego governs reaction, truth will retreat permanently. The invisible decay. Flattery does not cause immediate collapse. It causes slow distortion. You underestimate rivals. You overestimate loyalty. You ignore small warning signs. You dismiss criticism as envy. Each dismissal feels justified, until patterns emerge too late. By the time reality intrudes violently, your corrective systems have atrophied. That is the true danger. Not that you are praised, but that you are uncorrected. The court of flattery is the most beautiful trap in the world. It does not attack. It seduces. It makes you feel secure. And security without scrutiny is decay. Guard your ears more carefully than your borders. The seduction of popularity. If flattery corrupts the court, applause corrupts the ruler's spirit. The crowd is louder than the court. More chaotic, more emotional, and more intoxicating. When you stand before thousands and hear their approval rise like thunder, something shifts inside you. It feels like legitimacy. It feels like love. It feels like unity. But crowds are not stable organisms. They are emotional waves. They respond to feeling, not structure, not strategy, not long-term preservation. A ruler who governs by applause begins to calculate differently. He asks not, what secures the state, but, what preserves approval? And these are not the same question. The fragility of love. Love is conditional. Respect endures longer. Fear, when balanced, stabilizes. But love depends on benefit. When benefits decline, love weakens. When hardship arrives, affection evaporates. The crowd that cheers you during prosperity will question you during scarcity. If you built authority solely on popularity, you will have nothing to stand on when conditions change. The wise ruler understands this. He seeks not hatred. He avoids cruelty that breeds resentment. But he does not depend on adoration. He builds institutions. He builds systems. He builds loyalty through stability, not spectacle. The danger of performance. Applause encourages performance. Performance encourages exaggeration. Exaggeration distorts policy. When leaders begin crafting decisions for theatrical effect, seriousness declines. Substance erodes. Short-term gestures replace long-term reform. The crowd cheers generosity today, but tomorrow the treasury may weaken. The crowd cheers emotional speeches, but tomorrow strategy must operate quietly. A state cannot be governed theatrically forever. The serious work of preservation is often invisible. It does not generate applause. It generates endurance. Governing beyond noise. The ruler must observe the mood of the people. He must understand their fears. He must measure the grievances. But he must not become captive to their emotion. Emotion is unstable. Institutions must not be. The disciplined leader listens, withdraws, calculates, and decides. He does not decide in the middle of thunder. He decides in silence. There is something uniquely dangerous about being loved by many. It creates the illusion that you are indispensable. When thousands chant your name, when approval spreads across the public square, when admiration becomes habitual, a subtle transformation occurs within the ruler. He begins to equate visibility with legitimacy. He begins to believe that public enthusiasm reflects structural strength. But enthusiasm is wind. Structure is stone. Wind moves quickly. Stone endures. The crowd reacts to symbols, to speeches, to gestures, to narratives. It does not study policy deeply. It does not calculate long-term consequences. It does not weigh future instability against present pleasure. The crowd wants relief, reassurance, emotional resolution. The ruler who depends on applause begins to craft decisions that satisfy immediate desire rather than secure lasting order. He postpones painful reforms. He softens necessary discipline. He distributes rewards imprudently. He becomes generous where restraint would be wiser. This generosity wins praise. But praise costs resources. And resources are finite. When treasury weakens, when institutions strain, when external threats arise, the same crowd that cheered generosity will demand solutions. And if those solutions require hardship, affection will cool. This is not betrayal. It is nature. The crowd is not malicious. It is self-interested. It loves stability, prosperity, comfort. When those decline, it seeks explanation. If you have trained it to evaluate you emotionally, it will judge you emotionally. A ruler must avoid teaching his people that governance is spectacle. He must cultivate respect for order. He must allow the people to feel secure, but not entitled to constant gratification. There is a difference. Security breeds loyalty. Entitlement breeds volatility. The ruler who chases applause must constantly escalate performance. He must be louder, more dramatic, more generous, more theatrical. Eventually he exhausts both treasury and credibility. Performance without foundation collapses. It always does. The wise ruler prefers quiet respect to loud admiration. He accepts that some decisions will be unpopular in the moment. He understands that long-term stability often requires short-term discomfort. He measures success not by cheers, but by endurance. The crowd must feel protected. It must not feel dominant. Because when the crowd feels dominant, discipline evaporates. And without discipline, no state survives. 3. The chamber of unchecked ambition. The fire that consumes its owner. Ambition is not evil. Without ambition, cities remain small. Without ambition, reform never occurs. Without ambition, power never consolidates. But ambition without boundary becomes destruction. Imagine a war chamber. Maps spread across a heavy wooden table. Territories marked in ink. Borders traced in red. Each expansion feels like proof of greatness. Each conquest feels like validation of capability. The ambitious ruler believes momentum must never slow. He fears stagnation more than overextension. He sees opportunity everywhere. He sees weakness in rivals. He believes fortune favors boldness alone. Boldness is necessary, but boldness without consolidation is recklessness. Every new territory demands attention, administration, resources, military presence, cultural integration, loyalty. When expansion outpaces consolidation, strain develops. Institutions weaken under pressure. Communication fractures. Local resistance emerges. The ruler who overextends must divide his attention. Divided attention reduces precision. Reduced precision multiplies error. Ambition whispers, "Advance again." But the wise ruler asks, "Can I sustain this?" He measures capacity. He strengthens infrastructure before extending borders. He secures loyalty before moving outward. He understands that greatness lies not in how quickly one rises, but in how long one remains. Many rulers have conquered brilliantly. Few have maintained dominion for generations. The impatient leader believes that slowing momentum signals weakness. In truth, consolidation signals maturity. If ambition is fire, discipline is containment. Without containment, the fire consumes both enemy and architect. History is filled with leaders who mistook expansion for permanence. They grew rapidly. They collapsed dramatically. The ambitious ruler must cultivate patience. He must learn that sometimes the most strategic move is restraint. If your power expands faster than your structure, you build fragility. And fragility hides beneath success until crisis reveals it. Ambition must serve stability, not ego. When comfort replaces vigilance. After conquest comes celebration. After stability comes ease. After prosperity comes luxury. And this is where decay quietly enters. Picture a palace courtyard. Music drifts through open arches. Wine flows generously. Laughter fills warm evening air. The ruler, once hardened by struggle, now reclines comfortably. His armor rests unused. His soldiers drill less frequently. His advisors speak of prosperity more than preparedness. This is not corruption through cruelty. It is corrosion through comfort. Comfort lowers vigilance. Vigilance sustains power. When struggle disappears, discipline often disappears with it. The ruler begins to believe threats are distant. He interprets quiet as safety. But quiet may be preparation. Enemies observe. Rivals calculate. Internal factions reorganize. And the indulgent ruler grows slower. Reaction time lengthens. Urgency declines. Luxury alters perception. It creates the illusion that stability is permanent. But stability is temporary. Fortune is unstable. Peace must be treated as preparation time. The army must train harder during peace than during war. The treasury must be guarded more carefully during abundance than during scarcity. The ruler's mind must remain disciplined even when danger appears absent. Because danger rarely announces itself. It accumulates quietly. The indulgent ruler forgets hardship. And when hardship returns, he is unprepared. There is nothing inherently wrong with celebration. There is nothing inherently wrong with wealth. But indulgence must not replace readiness. The moment a ruler begins to prioritize comfort over preparation, decline begins. The garden is pleasant, but prolonged residence weakens strength. The corruption of judgment seduction weakens discipline. Now judgment begins to fracture. The state still stands. The throne is still occupied. But perception is no longer precise. Power rarely collapses while it feels strong. It collapses when judgment deteriorates. And judgment deteriorates slowly. Let us descend further. When protection becomes blindness, power attracts threat. The more authority you hold, the more potential rivals surround you. At first, the ruler is cautious but accessible. He hears reports directly. He observes the people. He walks among soldiers. But as suspicion grows, access narrows. Security increases. Doors close. Meetings become restricted. Information is filtered through layers. The fortress is built. It begins with stone. Then it becomes psychological. Isolation feels like safety. In truth, it is vulnerability disguised as control. When access is limited excessively, truth travels slowly. Reports are polished before reaching you. Data is curated. Bad news is softened. Critical warnings are delayed. Subordinates hesitate to deliver unpleasant information. Not because they are malicious, but because proximity to power is dangerous. The ruler, surrounded by loyal guards and selective advisors, begins to believe he sees clearly. But his view is partial. The fortress protects him from direct confrontation. It also protects him from reality. This is the paradox. A ruler who isolates too deeply loses awareness. And awareness is the first defense of power. Walls defend against invasion. They do not defend against ignorance. Ignorance is more destructive than assault. A ruler must design access carefully. He must not allow chaos of constant intrusion. But neither must he eliminate friction entirely. He must maintain channels through which unfiltered truth travels. He must occasionally step outside his own walls. Observe without ceremony. Listen without intermediaries. Otherwise corruption grows silently beneath him. Isolation breeds suspicion. Suspicion breeds harshness. Harshness breeds resentment. Resentment breeds conspiracy. And conspiracy thrives where rulers do not see clearly. The fortress becomes a prison when it cuts you off from truth. Security must never eliminate awareness. When trust replaces calculation, now judgment falters in another direction. The ruler, feeling secure in his isolation, turns outward to secure alliances. He negotiates treaties, forms partnerships, creates agreements. And here another illusion arises. The illusion of loyalty. Men do not bind themselves by affection in matters of power. They bind themselves by interest. Every alliance is built on incentive. When incentives align, loyalty appears strong. When incentives shift, loyalty dissolves. The naive ruler believes words. The disciplined ruler examines structure. What does your ally gain from your survival? What does he lose if you fall? What alternative opportunities exist for him? If your ally can gain more from betraying you than from supporting you, he eventually will. Not because he hates you, but because power is transactional. History teaches this repeatedly. Alliances collapse when necessity changes. The ruler who depends entirely on external support builds fragility into his foundation. If your strength rests upon another's army, another's treasury, another's influence, then your autonomy is compromised. Dependence is weakness concealed by cooperation. This does not mean alliances are useless. They are essential, but they must be structured carefully. Design alliances so that betrayal becomes costly. Align interests deeply. Integrate incentives. Never rely solely on promises. Never neglect internal strength while cultivating external support. The market of alliances is fluid. Those who enter it believing in permanence are deceived. Trust must be balanced with preparation. Always prepare for separation before it arrives. Because when it arrives unexpectedly, correction is difficult. The ruler must appear cooperative, but he must think independently. When image overrules necessity. Now we approach a more subtle distortion. The ruler begins to worry about reputation more than result. He fears appearing harsh. He fears criticism. He fears judgment from intellectuals, clergy, citizens, rivals. He wants to be admired for virtue. This desire is human. It is also dangerous. Virtue in private life is admirable. Virtue in public rule must be balanced with necessity. Sometimes firmness prevents disorder. Sometimes punishment deters chaos. Sometimes severity stabilizes the state. But the ruler concerned with appearance hesitates. He delays decisive action to avoid criticism. He softens necessary enforcement. He chooses mercy when example would preserve order. And from that hesitation, instability grows. The people interpret hesitation as weakness. Rivals interpret restraint as opportunity. Institutions interpret inconsistency as uncertainty. Mercy without calculation becomes confusion. The ruler must learn something difficult. He must learn how to act against his own desire for admiration. He must accept that being perceived as entirely good is incompatible with preserving power. This does not justify cruelty. It justifies decisiveness. Reputation matters, but survival matters more. The ruler who sacrifices stability for applause will eventually lose both. History remembers those who endure. It forgets those who were admired briefly but collapsed. Justice must be measured. Punishment must be precise. Mercy must be strategic. The tribunal inside your mind will ask, how will I be judged? Ask instead, what preserves order? Vanity is a quiet corrupter. It convinces you that moral approval is equivalent to strength. It is not. When emotion controls strategy, power attracts provocation. Enemies test you. Rivals insult you. Opponents attempt to provoke rash reaction. Anger is natural. Pride is powerful. The impulse to respond immediately feels strong. It feels decisive. It feels bold. But impulse is rarely strategic. The enemy who provokes you seeks to control timing. If he can force you to react prematurely, he gains advantage. If he can make you act emotionally, he clouds your calculation. The impulsive ruler mistakes speed for dominance. He believes immediate retaliation demonstrates strength. Often it reveals insecurity. True strength controls tempo. The disciplined ruler absorbs insult without visible reaction. He gathers information. He studies patterns. He calculates response at the moment of greatest leverage. Restraint is not weakness. It is strategic patience. Many leaders exhaust themselves reacting to every provocation. They enter unnecessary conflicts. They divide resources. They escalate minor disputes into major confrontations. All because pride demanded immediate response. The ruler must master himself before he masters his enemies. If you cannot govern your anger, you cannot govern a state. Pause is power. Delay is weapon. Silence is sometimes more destabilizing to your enemy than speech. The battlefield of impulse is invisible. It exists in the mind. Win there, and you preserve energy. Lose there, and you drain yourself before the true conflict begins. The collapse of power. By now, the ruler still holds authority. The throne remains occupied. The banners still hang. The army still marches. But internally, something has shifted. Truth is filtered. Judgment is narrowed. Alliances are fragile. Impulse distorts strategy. The collapse begins not with invasion. It begins with complacency. 9. The Hall of Forgotten History. When arrogance replaces memory, there is a quiet arrogance that grows in stable regimes. It whispers, "This time is different. My position is unique. My rivals are weaker than those of the past." Every era believes itself exceptional. Every ruler believes his circumstances unprecedented. This belief is dangerous. History does not repeat exactly, but it repeats structurally. Ambition overextends. Luxury weakens discipline. Faction divides unity. Isolation blinds leadership. These patterns are ancient, yet rulers ignore them because studying decline feels unnecessary during success. The Hall of Forgotten History is silent. Dust gathers on manuscripts. Lessons remain unread. Warnings are dismissed as irrelevant. The ruler who neglects precedent abandons advantage. History offers more than stories. It offers pattern recognition. The fall of Rome did not occur in a single day. It was gradual. Military overstretch. Political fragmentation. Moral decay. Economic strain. Florence did not fracture because it lacked intelligence. It fractured because factional rivalry overcame cohesion. The wise ruler studies failure more carefully than victory. Victory inflates pride. Failure reveals structure. When you understand how others collapsed, you see early signs within your own state. If treasury strains under expansion, history warns you. If factions grow bold within your court, history warns you. If military discipline softens during prosperity, history warns you. But arrogance dismisses these signs. Arrogance says, "We are stronger, we are different, we are more advanced." Arrogance isolates you from instruction. And instruction is protection. A ruler who forgets history repeats it unconsciously. He believes decline is sudden. It is not. It is patterned. And patterns ignored become destiny. The Hall of Forgotten History is not dangerous because it exists. It is dangerous because rulers refuse to enter it. Memory disciplines pride. Without memory, pride expands unchecked. 10. The Throne of Complacency. When stability becomes illusion, now we reach the final place. The throne, not when it is contested, but when it feels secure. This is the most dangerous moment in power. When enemies are quiet, when wealth flows steadily, when citizens appear content, when applause continues, when opposition seems weak, the ruler relaxes. He believes his systems are sufficient. He believes loyalty is stable. He believes threats have passed. But stability is temporary. Fortune is never static. The complacent ruler mistakes current calm for permanent safety. He delays reform because crisis is absent. He avoids restructuring because pressure is minimal. He allows institutions to stagnate. He keeps advisors too long. He neglects succession planning. He grows comfortable. Comfort dulls urgency. Urgency sustains vigilance. Without vigilance, decay accelerates. The complacent ruler no longer inspects systems personally. He trusts reports. He trusts routine. He trusts momentum. Momentum fades silently. The army drills less rigorously. The treasury tolerates inefficiency. Local leaders accumulate private power. All of this appears minor. But minor weaknesses accumulate. And when fortune shifts, accumulated weakness reveals itself at once. The complacent ruler is shocked by crisis. He says, "How did this happen?" It happened slowly. During comfort. During confidence. During stability. Power is safest when treated as temporary. The vigilant ruler behaves as though tomorrow could bring challenge. He reforms during peace. He rotates authority before corruption deepens. He inspects structures even when they appear stable. He strengthens institutions before crisis demands it. Because once crisis arrives, correction becomes reactive. Reactive correction is costly. Proactive strengthening is strategic. Complacency whispers that preparation is unnecessary. Preparation is always necessary. The final reckoning. Observe the entire arc. First came flattery, then applause, then unchecked ambition, then indulgence, then isolation, then fragile alliances, then moral vanity, then impulse, then forgotten history, then complacency. None of these alone destroys power immediately. Together, they guarantee its decline. Collapse is not dramatic in origin. It is cumulative. The throne does not fall because one decision was flawed. It falls because correction mechanisms eroded over time. When truth stopped reaching you. When applause influenced judgment. When ambition outpaced structure. When comfort replaced vigilance. When isolation narrowed perception. When alliances were trusted blindly. When reputation outweighed necessity. When impulse overruled calculation. When history was ignored. When complacency replaced preparation. By the time visible crisis appears, foundations are already compromised. The enemy most capable of destroying you was never outside your gates. It was inside your judgment. Power demands more than ambition. It demands discipline. It demands humility before history. It demands suspicion of comfort. It demands resistance to flattery. It demands control over emotion. It demands constant renewal. The ruler who masters others but not himself eventually loses both. The ruler who governs his perception preserves his state longer than fortune alone would allow. There are 10 dangerous places. They are not cities. They are conditions of mind. Enter them carelessly, and collapse is certain. Avoid them deliberately, and endurance becomes possible. Power is not maintained by strength alone. It is maintained by awareness. Guard your awareness. Guard your discipline. Guard your judgment. Because once perception collapses, the throne soon follows.